Real quick, want to thank also Chris Davis with Approach Lending. He is a private money lender. Anybody use Chris in the room for a deal? Lance asked, was it a good deal? Did it go well? Awesome, fantastic. That could have gone sideways. I should have betted that in the future, Cory.
I know who you're picking.
Yeah, not all winners. And then Kristen Wallace with Jacob Lay Property Management. I have known Kristen for about 13 years. Helped her get started with her company, move her company, online out of onto a CRM. And I've seen her build this. She manages 1,100 units in Knoxville now, and she is a bulldog. Like her vacancy, when compared to the competition, I think she does the best job in town. So if you're looking for a property manager, it's an integral part of what we do. Have a conversation with them. Give me that contact information. Time to get started, Cory.
You all right? That's right.
All right.
Let's rock. Right.
We good, Dalton? Okay. So here we go. This month we're talking about, no, back up here, Dalton's saying no. This month we are talking about Commercial 101. So this is your intro to commercial. We're going to break it all down, the terms, the terminology, the asset classes, and we've got an incredible speaker for you. Cory, you stoked?
I'm stoked. Stoked to be
Yes.
back. First month back.
This is true.
Yeah.
I forgot. Big round of applause for Cory. Welcome back.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
He just had his third king to extend the dynasty.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Simon Miles.
Yep. Simon Miles King. It's it's great to be back. I missed everybody last month, so glad to be back here in front of the room, seeing everybody, seeing some familiar faces, and seeing some new ones as well. This is always cool just to see this community continue to grow and expand and just bringing in more people to the tribe. So welcome to all of our new people. What's up to all of our returning people as well. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, let's get it started.
Yeah,
What's the next?
let's do it.
What's the next slide? We got some giveaways.
Let's do it. That's right. So
Info. What's Grid, Cory?
what is Grid, right? Grid is our global real estate investing community we like to bring here to a hyper-local level here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So there's Grid communities all across the country. So if you know somebody in some other markets and they're looking to get into investment real estate, highly recommend they look for their nearest Grid community as one to participate in. We definitely like to say we are not here to be gurus to pontificate on high. We're just here to be real people doing real deals in real time. Here sharing our experiences with you and trusting you're going to share your experiences and knowledge with everybody else in this room so we can all learn and grow together.
So the reason we do this, right? The reason why we build community, one, we think community is vitally important, right? We think if we could do one thing to make a difference, like having more community, more connection, more trust is a tangible way to change our world, and we can do that right now without waiting until the end of our lives we're massively successful. Also, because we want to do deals. So if you're in here and you're super experienced and you could teach this class, fantastic. Come talk to us afterwards. We want to do deals with you. And if you are brand new, we want to take you on the journey. We want to introduce you to people just like yourself. I see a lot of blue name tags. Want to make sure you make some friends, you feel comfortable, right? So that eventually you're ready to take action as well, just like everybody else. You got to start someplace.
That's right.
Yes.
I like to definitely say we definitely welcome all experiences, all levels. Everybody's here just to learn and grow together. So welcome, everybody.
Yeah, glad to have you. So real fast before we get started, Zach, where you at, buddy?
Right here.
Awesome. You want to come up here real fast? Sure. Excellent. So
On the stage?
yeah, jump right up here, right center stage. Cory can grab you a mic. So we've got Zach. Tell us about the work you've been doing, bringing water to everyone that's been affected by the flooding.
So I'll start out initially. Charles Gorman and I, who run Sono Investor Group, we went out on Saturday to try to volunteer in Newport and Greenville, and unfortunately we couldn't because they were still doing deep water rescue. So I did shuttle some water from their staging area to where all the first responders were, and then we went up to Greenville to try to help. But after that, we're kind of had to come home. But after that, I realized that my calling for cleanup, it's not the time for that. So I decided to get donations from people to start shuttling water out. So I can haul 4 pallets of water at a time. So I delivered 4 pallets Tuesday morning out to Newport. And those were donated by Chris from South Coast Pizza. He's also donated another 4. So I'm going to be taking those out Friday morning. And I have all the money that you guys have donated so far will be going to the third set of 4. So it costs about $1,750 round trip between water and fuel. So we still need donations coming in so I can continue to bring the people that need the water, the water.
And you're bringing this to a distribution, they've set up a distribution center, so you're bringing the pallets directly to the distribution center and they're distributing it out.
Yes.
Yeah. We always believe in it being efficient. So yeah, Zach, we've supported Zach. Zach's a great member of the community. We appreciate, and you and Charles are great members of the community. Like, if you have not been to Sono, it's my favorite place to go because I'm not leading it, so I can actually network. So it's your networker's favorite networking meeting. But yeah, that is Zach's Venmo right there. Zach-Daryl, all funds are going directly to water and supporting people in Cott County. And
Yeah, so I think I'll be doing 2 deliveries Friday morning, and then I would like to go up there with my piece of equipment and help out. I've had a couple people reach out saying they need debris put into dumpsters. So I'm not sure where one is, and I think the second one is in Elizabethton. So we're going up and helping.
we appreciate you, man. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. So, and I'd like to give some options as well. If you've not worked with Second Harvest before, we've done a lot of fundraisers and work with Second Harvest over the years, just personally, and then through a nonprofit we helped start called Pints for Purpose. So Second Harvest serves 18 counties here. So in addition to hunger right now, they're addressing water. They're the most efficient charity that I know of in East Tennessee. Over 95 cents of every dollar you donate goes directly towards feeding people. So in a normal time, if you give $1, that's the equivalent to 3 meals. So our Christmas party every year, anything we do there, any funds we raise there, those are going to go towards Second Harvest. There's a double year donation. So we've been able to raise in the past over 27,000 meals for hungry people here in East Tennessee. So there is we're making a donation. We made a donation to Zach, and we're also making a donation of $500 to Second Harvest. So I'd love to see if we can match that in the room today. You know, just get with us if you do. Let us know so we can let Second Harvest know. But they do an incredible job. All the information is at that QR code. You can get with your phone, and we'll email it out to everybody tomorrow as well.
Yeah, we'll put it on the newsletter.
Yes. All right. Who's got a grid win? Who's got something that they're celebrating right now? Yeah?
Let's go, Will.
Will, what do you got?
I got married a week and a half ago,
Yeah,
Hey.
let's go.
and I closed on a flip a week ago.
Let's go, double.
Your wife will be happy that you listed them in that order.
Yeah,
Smart
100%.
Man. Smart man. Huh. One of the best things you can do to get married, if you're in sales, it's proof that, at least you can close. Will's married up. It's a good job, Will. Congratulations. That's awesome. I saw another hand go up back here.
Yeah.
Alex. What's that? Alex just closed on a deal. I love it. Yes.
Congratulations.
We're
Good
glad
stuff,
to
man.
have you in the room,
Good
Alex.
stuff.
All right. Carl, Cory, sorry, man.
So I got married 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, let's
Hey,
go.
let's go. Congrats.
Congratulations.
Closed a loan last Friday.
I love it.
Good stuff.
Anybody looking to get married? We can set up Grid Matchmaker, a little dating app. I saw one more hand. Stop that. Stop. Never mind. Yeah, Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan.
Insta. Morgan
Very
got
nice.
his
Congrats.
second flip. I love it. Morgan started flipping after he started coming to Grid, which is really cool to see. Like
That's
he
awesome.
sat here and was like, "I'm gonna take action."
That's good
I love
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
You got any Grid wins?
Yeah, I'm picking up another flip on Friday this month. So I'm picking up a basement ranch in Powell that we're going to flip and have back on the market in by ideally end of October. That's the plan. Try to get this
Okay.
thing in and out.
I love it. We make plans and God laughs. But
That's
that's
right.
okay. The real estate gods always
right.
got to pay their due. I've got one Grid win. Where's
Yeah.
Lance hiding here?
There he is.
So Lance went under contract on his first short-term rental.
Hey, congrats, Lance.
It's a new construction townhouse. There's one more available on the market. So they're off market, but get with me after the meeting if you're curious about it. It's a short-term rental a few minutes from downtown, but just really exciting. We were having the conversation where he's like, I always wanted to do it. I've been doing flips and I just got into it. So I love seeing people take action, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
The first one is the most important one.
That's
cool.
really cool. Yeah, next
What do we have
up-
coming up, Cory?
Yeah, so one of our next events, right? We've expanded our networking reach by adding a morning coffee meetup. And so it is the following Friday, so like next Friday, right? Coffee, donuts, and deals, or coffee, donuts, and networking. We'll be here.
Right here.
Here.
Right here.
Next Friday. We got kicked out of our last spot because we overgrew that. We had about like 50 of us show up to the last one, which was really awesome. It's really cool to see that, again, also taking some life and growing. So we're going to expand that out. It'll be next Friday here, 9 a.m.
There's a
Come
business
hang out.
lesson there.
Yeah.
So, right, we had like a record number of noise complaints. Everyone was not happy with us. And we were not good co-working neighbors throwing a gigantic networking event. And also, it's why modern design is not great for sound. Like, this, it looks cool.
100%,
It
yeah.
sucks for sound. But we just bought everyone donuts. And we wrote everyone a nice letter. Yeah, Duke. They're jealous. I don't know. I think they just wanted to work.
Yeah.
And so, but it was interesting to see, like, yeah, buying the donuts. I was sitting there. No one has any idea who Cory or I are there, frankly, because they're there to work and not like network with us. But it was cool watching people of like, we both are in the restaurant business. When you get complaints, that is an opportunity to get customers for life if you handle it correctly. So, some duck donuts and some Krispy Kreme and a nice letter roll it took to smooth that over. If you're looking for some pro tips, be here.
Yeah.
Next Friday at
Next
9.
Friday, 9 o'clock.
And it's I got asked, I don't know if Lisa's available, we'll see if you're available next Friday, but I got asked if we could extend it into there. But let's start with our intros. Let's
Yep.
get in here. Let's get Lisa up here.
Cool.
Who are we?
Cool. So
So
who
it
am
sounds
I?
like an existential college question.
No, right?
right?
Who am I, right? No, so my name's Cory. I'm an agent. I'm an investor here in Knoxville. I got my start back in 2009, just buying my first house hacking, got into flipping lots, which was really cool and a fun little side hustle into that. Moved here in 2018 and just went all into production. And since then, I've been able to acquire up to now 6 rentals. At this point, was able to let the missus step out of work with our second one about like 2 years ago. And so that's really cool. Just progressing on that journey towards financial independence. And so I'm just happy to be on this journey with everybody.
Yeah, like we firmly believe that the American dream is real, right? And it's accessible to all of us through small business ownership and real estate investing. Those are two simple paths where I think there's a level playing field for us. My name is Justin Myers. I am an agent, I'm an investor, but most importantly, I'm a connector. I started in real estate back in 2005. I was a mortgage broker in Tampa, and I got a front row seat to watch the economy blow up, right? Interestingly enough, I was curious to see what's going to happen, with commercial resetting. We may be going through some similar opportunities because when that happened, I'll tell you, I worked with this old guy. Now I'm probably his age, but he was old at the time when we were all in our early 20s. Jesse wore Hawaiian shirts, and Jesse was like, drive around Tampa. Where are all the luxury jobs? All these luxury condos are empty at night. This is exactly like the savings and loan crisis in the 90s. When this turns, they're all going to walk away from these condos. And so, yeah, like Michael Lewis's first book is all about Liar's Poker, is all about that savings and loan crisis if you want to understand it. But I like to share that just because even then there were people on the ground telling you exactly what was going to happen if you knew who to listen to. So you're in the right room. We're going to give you some good information. Over the years, I've had a lot of different experience in investing in real estate. And what I hope to accomplish is to see some people go on a journey, right? Like Cory did. I've got to know Cory this whole time. He used to be on a team I was running. And, it's been really cool just to witness someone come in and like, hey, I can get financially free. I can replace my bills with real estate investing, and going on your 4th year now, right?
Yeah. 5th at the point, but yeah, still
Like
like
fifth
yeah.
year of like, hey, I came in here, started running an active income play, which you can all do as investors, right? Maybe your active income play is wholesaling or flipping or something else. Maybe you're private lending like Greg, right? And then I can roll that active income into an income flip, and I can start investing, and then I can have passive income so I can get financially free.
That's right.
Who's got a deal?
Who's got a deal they want to shop?
Anybody got a deal that they want to shop to the room? Travis.
It had a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, cul-de-sac, 37922 zip code off of Westland Drive. And it has a mother-in-law suite, fully operational kitchen.
Okay.
Should be coming to market maybe 2 weeks.
All right. Travis got a deal. Who's got an off-market deal? Anybody got an off-market deal they're looking for a buyer for? You guys get one, Cory? I got some.
I do, yeah. I got a cabin in Gatlinburg, 9 bedrooms, 6 baths, right off the strip. Can't be more than 100 yards off the strip. Asking price on that's about $1.2 million. There's some seller credits able to get there. Projections look to be about $150,000 a year gross income. So if you want to chat about it, if you know anybody looking for a short-term rental in Gatlinburg, holler. Happy to chat.
And I seem to keep uncovering buildable lots in the city limits. So I found another one today. Get with me if you're curious about buildable lots. I think spec builds are the smartest play that you could be doing. It's what I like to do.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Who in the room is buying deals?
Every inch.
Take a look around. All right. Who's got money to lend? Let me hold $20. Jen does. Greg, Roger. Anybody else got money to lend? Morgan does. Nathan back there. All right, fantastic. Who's a vendor? Who's got a service that everyone needs to know about in the room? Joey, what do you do?
I own a demo company.
Awesome. Justin, what do you do?
Public adjuster.
I saw another hand go up here. Let's go. Emily, what do you do?
Social media marketing.
Social media marketing. I feel like I've seen you before. Awesome. What do you do, Jesse?
Real estate bookkeeping.
Fantastic. Any other vendors in the room? Yes.
I sell appliances.
Ooh, are you with Ferguson's?
Friedman.
Friedman's. Okay, yeah.
Cool. Right on.
Yeah, no. That's actually what I was thinking. I had my F's confused. Yes.
My wife's incredibly shy, but she does property management, short-term rentals.
I love it. Property management, short-term rentals in the back here. Zach, Dunright Holloway. What do you do? Everything. Zach does everything. All right. So if you got a honey-do list, call
Dalton.
Zach. Anybody else?
Dalton.
Dalton.
Media solutions, video, photo, SEO, all the others.
Tell people what you're doing right now.
We are live streaming Grid onto the Grid Investor YouTube channel.
Okay. That was very literal. I was actually thinking of what you're doing with the Booster Club, but that's even more. Yes. If you actually need Dalton to do what we're doing here, he's an amazing solution. But Dalton's been doing some really cool work with UT. Yeah. Creating content for the NIL club.
Yep.
Who is new today?
Oh, yeah, new people.
Raise them high. Raise them high. Welcome.
Very
We're so
cool.
glad
Welcome.
you're here.
Yeah, very cool.
Yes. Well, some of us are glad we're here. All right. Okay. Cory, you want to?
Yeah, a couple
Some
giveaways.
giveaways?
Be curious to know who thinks they traveled the farthest to get here today.
Sam said,
No.
and he said no.
No, you're like immediately like no.
Talbot.
Sevierville,
Ooh,
Talbot.
Sevierville, Talbot. That's close. Talbot's a little further out. Have to look at a map.
Yeah,
How
who's,
far is Sweetwater compared
we
to like a
look on your
Talbot? I feel
phone.
like Talbot's
Figure
there.
this
Yeah,
out
give me
for
a map.
us.
Map who's the farthest. Thank
All
you,
right,
Dalton.
Dalton has
Dalton's
that.
on
Anybody
that,
else
for sure.
farther?
Thinks they're further from Talbot or
Anybody?
Sweetwater.
Anybody shy? All right, we'll figure it out.
Figure it out. We'll do a giveaway too.
Okay,
figure it out.
we're gonna come back.
49.
Oh, all right. There you go.
Ooh, Jen-
You win
Jen-
by far.
You win some Grid swag.
Jen, you'll connect with Allison in the back. Allison, wave hi. Say hi. Cool. We'll get you something cool.
Allison's got a Grid T-shirt with your
Yeah.
name on it.
Who's done their first deal in the last 60 days?
Fix and flip in Oliver Springs.
That's awesome.
Love it.
What's your name?
Congrats.
It's a short sale, but
Riley.
it'll be a double close, probably end up being a wholesale deal.
Very cool.
I don't know that I want to deal with fix and flip because the margins are pretty high right now. Very generous sales price, ARV is pretty high, and the rehab costs aren't too bad. So.
I love it,
Good
Riley.
doing. Riley,
So it
congrats.
sounds like you had a successful fix and flip. Awesome. That's how they get you. And then you're like, oh, this isn't so bad.
That's cool. Good
And
stuff.
then you've got $50K in foundation work you didn't account for.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No.
We also are running a social media contest right now. So if you tag us on Facebook, hashtag Greg Knoxville, and why are we doing this? Well, one, we want to promote this, but more importantly, who in the room here is an investor? Who's looking to invest in real estate? All right, great. You want a marketing message? Your marketing message is I buy houses. And so when you go here and you make posts and you're in the room and you start talking about it, you start attracting. Has anyone seen that happen? I see Greg nodding. I see
1000%.
Cindy nodding, right? Like that's what happens. Like your friends are watching. Like you might only get 30 views, but you don't need 500 views. I don't know how many friends most of us have, but if 30 of my friends know what I'm doing, that's a much bigger difference, right? Usually no one has any idea what I'm going on. So
True.
jump on there. We're going to pick our favorite, but take a selfie, take a photo of the event, tag us, right?
Tag
And we'll pick a couple winners at the end.
That's right.
All right.
Quick legalese.
Yeah, man.
Don't sue me, bro. Don't take any of this as financial advice. Talk to your attorneys, talk to your CPAs, right? Again, we're here just do real people, real deals, real time. Here sharing our experiences with you, trusting everybody's going to share their experiences there. So the state of Tennessee just really wants us to be very clear that we are not financial advisors, we are not appraisers, we are not surveyors, right? We are not CPAs. Don't sue me, bro.
Yes. And if this is your first grid, like if you're watching at home, before you invest, you need to sit down and have a conversation and figure out if I've earned the right to invest. Is my financial house in order? Like I should be investing money that I can afford to have tied up. Yeah. Or else things get real shaky.
Sorry, that's right.
No.
Lisa.
Can we bring up our guest speaker? Need a big round of applause for Lisa McNeely. What's that? What's that?
Welcome.
You're gonna sit right in the middle for, if that's okay. But yeah, just stand for a second though, because we're gonna introduce you.
We're going to introduce you.
Yes. So I wanted to bring Lisa here because last year Lisa was in the room and Lisa asked some of the best questions in the room. We had Christian Swan come from Atlanta. She's really incredible. She's going to join us via Zoom to talk a little bit about what that does. She's working in like what it's like working in a major metro and on the institutional side and what that looks like. So she'll be back here in 2 weeks. We'll post that event. We wanted Lisa here because Lisa is a great resource. Both Cory and I have co-listed properties with Lisa. We've collaborated with her. We used to all be at the same brokerage, but she's been, just when she came to that brokerage, she was an incredible resource for all the residential agents when we were there. And that's a brokerage with hundreds of agents. Like Lisa stood out to us. We wanted to have her here because we want to bring you the best that we can find. And we think Lisa's one of the best communicators, and it's certainly who we trust with our clients on the commercial side. So Lisa, you want to give us a quick intro of who you are?
Yeah, thank you. No pressure. So I have actually personally been in business for myself, little over 5 years, well, 6 years now almost. Was in the corporate world for years and years. So I started off with GE for a number of years after leaving Ford Motor Company, and 20 plus years, believe it or not, with that company in different roles, everything from running a large manufacturing facility where we did actuation systems for Blackhawk and Seahawk and external fuel tanks for F-18s and everything from additive manufacturing to medical devices. So on that note, one thing I was responsible for was our properties globally. So for me, being a vice president of supply chain, I was responsible for over 200 properties globally, buying, selling, flipping actually, with some of our businesses that we bought and sold. So that's where kind of the passion was, and that's where I enjoyed doing it, and went into M&A for a long time for a private equity firm, and just kind of kept getting into it, and finally said, you know what, I'm done with this, and decided to do it for myself. And I will say I have to give credit to my husband. So this is my husband in the front row. You can say hi to Spoon. His name is not Ernest. He goes by Spoon, like knife and fork. Don't let him fool you. So, but anyways, if it wasn't for him saying like, why are you doing this? Why do you keep doing it for everybody else? I mean, I was making good money and I had good benefits, and it was great to travel, but it didn't make sense to keep doing it for everyone else and seeing businesses be successful while I kind of sat back. And so now I get to do it myself and make my own money. So
We're so glad to have you here. I'm gonna have you sit here. Actually, I lied, and I'll sit in the middle with Cory.
sounds good.
And then we're gonna swap out your batteries real quick on this mic while we get started. So, who has some experience in the room with commercial real estate? Awesome. Awesome. This is amazing. Great. So,
Prove me wrong.
no. So this is commercial 101. So if you have questions, we've tried to really, we've got a glossary we're going to send out for everybody to review. So if you want the glossary, we'll get this thing to you to break all the terms down. But if you have any questions, throw a hand up, stop us. Those are the best questions. I always get thanked afterwards. I'm so glad you explained what M&A is. M&A is mergers and acquisitions. So Lisa was working on the mergers and acquisitions side, or what LTV is, right? Or what triple net. So Cory, take it away, man.
Yeah, that's right. So we certainly love residential real estate. This is certainly how a lot of us built our businesses, how a lot of us earn our income, because everybody has a need for a house, yes? At the same time, there's plenty of other ways to make money through real estate here, such as, right, commercial, office building, industrial warehouse, retail properties, self-storage, hotels, cell phone towers, billboards, mixed use, think like retail with apartments above, right? So we're here to talk about that, right? And how we dive into this. I guess the first part is, where do we find it?
Yeah, so we've got lots of different options. But the first thing to understand, we'll go to the next slide, is that the commercial landscape is entirely different. Like, you can't just search an address like you can. On the residential side with Zillow, you have access to the same information as realtors typically, at least on the front end, not the back end information, but you have the same front end listings. That is not true on the commercial side. So go back to the one here before. Yeah, no. So this is like where to look, and let's just talk through those. Like, Lisa, like, any thoughts you have on those 4 different sources of where you actually go find inventory?
First, they're expensive, so know that, which is, again, a good reason to understand, your startup costs getting into commercial real estate are not cheap. So definitely partner with folks if you can before spending the money. But a couple of the different, things that you see on here, we can start kind of from the bottom up. So for East Tennessee, one thing that is nice is that we do have kind of our own commercial MLS, if you will. And you can buy into that and see properties. And the good thing for us is that a lot of agents in East Tennessee do use it, whereas that is not the case in other states. And so I am licensed in multiple states. I work across, last year, well, even this year, I did deals from Michigan to Washington State to Atlanta, here, you name it. So there's a lot of agents that do not use their local MLSs at all. And so you would have to go to something like a CoStar, a LoopNet, or a Crexi, which are, obviously very similar to an MLS, just on a national scale. But you could be paying $5,000 a year for a license.
Who's an agent in the room? Yeah. Okay, cool.
So it just gives you an idea. And not all of them are even showing all the same properties. So it's kind of tough because you could go into one and not see everything else that another one has. So it's a little tough if you're trying to represent your clients to make sure that you're giving them the best view of potential opportunities. And if you don't have these, you could lose out on that.
And I think the first thing I wanted to touch on is on the residential side, right? Who likes to represent themselves, find deals for themselves on the residential side? Nathan, yeah, like a lot of investors do. And they seems like the same access to it, and a lot of agents don't specialize in investments. On the commercial side, it is very difficult to represent yourself and find a lot of inventories held off market, or you don't even have access to those same sources. That's one of the reasons why we co-list property with Lisa, because I do not have the resources to adequately represent my commercial clients. I would not be able to syndicate or give them the service they deserve because I don't have access to those platforms. Yeah.
Fair.
Excellent.
I thought it was because I was awesome, but now he's just basically saying that it was.
No, we just had
The
the
truth
one.
comes out.
Yes. No, we had one actually that was on the commercial MLS, but it wasn't getting the traction. And so, said, Cory, why don't we co-list this with Lisa? She's got a lot more access and expertise. Like, just on that alone, we'll get into the complex problem solving. So let's go to the next slide, Cory, and I'll let you jump on this.
We'll talk about, sorry, I will skip that one a little bit. So I guess when it comes to getting into these properties, there's a lot of market factors to consider across this, and some real considerations in your due diligence period when you're actually going to invest in commercial real estate. So we look at things here like area demographics and income, environmental studies, huge one, right? If there's been a brownfield or something like that, there before health and safety permitting, transportation options, and accessibility getting to these properties, visibility, signage that you would have, what's the street traffic or walk-by traffic that this property would have, geography, topography, I guess would be in there as well, and just elevation, right here, we just think like cell phone towers. My grandpa actually has a spot out in Sevierville, weirdly enough, that he just leased out for a cell phone tower and makes a little bit of cash off of that, and he wasn't doing anything with the dirt, so it just made sense to do it.
Yep. And there are companies right now looking to buy property that have cell phone towers on them, just so you guys know. So if you need some connections, let me know.
And so I started my career in Knoxville doing transaction coordination, doing contract to close. So once it goes under contract, like shepherding it to there. And what I thought was interesting about commercial that was different than residential was so much of it was coordinating and executing the due diligence. Yeah.
So I will say there's a couple things, and I want to circle back because I think stories are helpful. On the environmental side, so when I took over running the plant, I was moved out to Santa Ana, California, taking over a large manufacturing plant, and I walked into a P&L that had $215,000 of fines that had cost us net income the prior year, all because of environmental permitting. And so just understand how important it is. And, when two things I want to kind of reiterate, and we'll probably hit them on here. If you do not do commercial real estate and you practice out of scope and you don't know how to educate your clients on these things, your E&O insurance does not cover you either. So you can and will get sued. And this is something to keep in mind. So you do not want to jump into this without understanding what it takes and, partnering with somebody who can help you be successful and that you represent your client the best you can.
Sure. Yeah, for the non-agents in the room, your E&O is your errors and omissions insurance. This is a requirement that we as agents all have to carry. That is just a background insurance, again, for protection from again, errors and omissions on documents, right? As we're processing these things through, we're dealing with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars at a time. And so there needs to be layers of protection in there. But in this case, again, if you're practicing outside of your scope, that insurance does not overlap.
And one of the things that's important about errors and omissions insurance is it's a shield for my clients, right? So I have that in place. I had a listing. We had the square footage incorrectly, sold for $2.6 million. Client was an attorney. Client threatens to sue after the fact because the square footage is different. The buyer threatened to sue because there was a square footage discrepancy. It went away very quickly because what harm did you suffer? The property appraised, so you were fine. You got your money's worth. It was like a 10,000 square foot property, so it was really a small difference. But the errors and omissions insurance was there to step into that. I've seen it in other instances as well. So if I'm acting outside of my scope and my E&O insurance doesn't kick in, I'm really not acting as a fiduciary for not only am I on the line as an agent, more importantly, I am exposing my clients to risk.
And your brokerage,
Yeah, which
if
is
you're an agent. Yeah.
Yeah, Garrett.
Question on that, why would he sue in that particular instance?
Because he's an attorney.
Most aggravated?
Dude, honestly, it's not the first time I've just seen transaction where attorneys sue in transactions because they represent themselves. Yeah, and put the squeeze. It's
Well, and if you
give me
think
the
about it
after
too,
off camera, and I'll tell you more stories.
if you think about it as well, and this is where there's a lot of differences with commercial, but everybody gets hung up on price per square foot also when they're doing comps and things like that. So people place a lot of value on that, and I have my own opinions on whether or not that's really the way we should be doing things, but that would be another reason why somebody would really care about that over time, especially if they're going to sell eventually.
Sure. So a couple other factors, I guess, to go into there when we're doing a deep dive into your due diligence into your properties. At times, right, you'll hear people ask for a rent roll or sometimes called a T12. That's a trailing 12 roll of expenses. So you really want to understand what the tenancy, vacancy, length terms of any leases that might be in place, tenants that might be in place, et cetera. Utility history, of course, that's going to be a big factor into there. And then just obviously the physical condition of the building, systems, furnishings, et cetera, that goes into play. Right. Oh, sure.
There's one line that I wanted to, and this I'd love for you to talk about, the quality of the existing tenants and leases, because I think that might be the overlooked line in the whole thing that you wouldn't know. Some of this stuff is kind of transferable from residential, so let's talk about that, Lisa.
Do you remember how Justin said I asked a lot of questions? My husband can attest to that. I am a question person, and I like getting into the details. I also have a finance degree, so for me, numbers matter and facts matter. And so one thing I'm going to tell everybody is make sure that the information you put out there is accurate, because I will find out if it's not, and a lot of other people will as well, and you are not representing your client well, and it's also really bad for your own brand, okay? So the reason that's important, and I'll give you an example, is I had called somebody and I said, okay, you're listing this property at this price, and here's the type of tenants that you said are in it, which is why you're pricing it the way you are. And it turns out that not only the leases he said that he had in place being triple net leases, which we'll get into later about the difference, were not in fact triple net leases. The quality of the tenants themselves and the leases was very, very low. In fact, the majority of them are month to month. They had already expired. And so, again, valuation of a property and the performance of that asset, and we'll get into kind of what that means, can vary greatly depending on the type of tenants, the mix of the tenants, and how good those leases are. So that's the type of due diligence that you'd always want to do up front in understanding the value of a property. And it really applies no different to multifamily and things like that as well. So
That's a great point. I remember we took over a 19-unit multifamily. What we found out was that the owner, who will not be named here, had poached all of the good tenants and totally fabricated the rent roll. So I was doing management on this, and I got to come into people that are already 4 months behind, evicting them like out of the property, many more, but they'd pulled all the stable tenants out of the place. So it is equally applicable in multifamily. Yeah. Cory, you want the next one?
Cool. So, just like in residential investing, some of the best deals oftentimes come from distressed assets and motivated sellers. So in that, you're really going to have a good understanding for just estimating those costs, securing good contractors, determining your cap rates and your ROI or your return on investment, identifying and negotiating with said motivated sellers, property management, financing and taxes, right? Consult a good CPA, like have a good bookkeeper on hand who can help you out through these processes as well. It's similar, I guess, to an extent in terms of residential investing, just a lot of added extra pieces that can go into there. So oftentimes those transactions can oftentimes take significantly longer to complete comparative to your typical residential sale that might just take about 30 days from contract to close.
do you guys know what a cap rate is and how it's calculated? Anybody? No. Okay, good. All right. So, yeah, the price that they've got it listed at, right? So, then there's
for
an
those
actual.
at home, so cap rate is net, there's a slide in there if you want to skim through it. It's net operating income divided by property value. Go ahead.
Yep. So initially, right, the cap rate's going to be the property value, quote unquote, is going to be the purchase price that somebody has it listed at, right? So then it's our job to go in and make sure that the property value and, the price that they've got it listed at can stand against the net operating income that they're reporting. And that's where it goes back to what we were saying. A lot of times you'll actually dig into those numbers, and that net operating income could include stuff that's based on a pro forma. It's not even actuals, but there's no way to prove that. Or you go in to prove it and you find out the comps are very different. So, that number could be marketed at 10%, and you get into the details and you find out it's really more like 6%, which means what we're going to offer for that property is way less than the purchase price. So knowing that is good because you're going to be a better negotiator for your clients. Was there a question?
Yeah, how does cap rate in commercial differ from residential? Like, what's like the average cap rate you find in Knoxville or maybe another market?
So
Yeah.
Your question was, how does cap rate differ, meaning like on a return level? How does a cap rate that you could receive differ from residential versus commercial? And what are some typical cap rates you would see in the Knoxville market? Cool.
So for residential, really the only way you would have that is if you're looking at a rental property or something that's, you're getting income off of that's recorded that way. And so those cap rates are going to be much lower typically, which isn't a bad thing. It's just the averages are lower. For commercial real estate, and this is why I always laugh, I have clients that'll come to me and say, all right, I'm looking for something that's 8 to 10% cap rate, and here's what I want. Okay, good luck finding that right now. Okay, so for a long time, you could get those rates, especially during COVID and other things like that. But right now, getting a 6 to 7% cap rate's pretty good, depending on the type of property that you find. 8% is great. I just had a client that I got a property, they were marketing it at a 10% cap rate. They were wrong. We went through and did the diligence. I still got him to 8%, and we'll be able to put a tenant in there that gets him to 10. So there's opportunity always, but even a 6 or 7% in commercial can be considered good. However, what I want to caution this by is it all depends on the type of buyer. Because if you have a buyer that's all cash or is bringing a 1031 exchange, or whatever into the mix, great. But if you're carrying debt service on that property and you're paying something higher than that cap rate, you didn't win anything. Right.
Can I dumb it down?
Yeah.
Yeah. So debt service is one of the terms, right? It's what I'm paying for my financing. We're going to call it debt service in commercial. We use lots of terms so we sound smarter. And it's just also it's what the terms that are used in the industry. It's not us who sound smarter. Those are just the terms that are used by professionals. One of the things that makes cap rate different than cash on cash is it takes into account the cost of your financing. Like that's going to be included as part of one of the costs there. Before you get your net operating income would be debt service. Net operating income is after I pay my debt and I pay those other expenses. So as you were saying, cap rate can really vary, but you have buyers that are buying for all sorts of different use cases and different investing strategies on the commercial side because you're also dealing with, like Lisa was, major institutions. So sometimes you're dealing with, in the same marketplace, right?
Right. And it kind of brings up a point I want to make. I'm not going to say that you need to be expert at it by any means, but, one of the reasons I think I can be as successful at this as I am is because, one, I do come from a finance background. Two, I spent a large amount of time with our general counsel as my day-to-day partner for about 10 years straight. So I got really good at legal documents and understanding that. And with commercial, there are always attorneys involved, always legal involved, always needing to go through the numbers. So you're dealing with other people's CPAs all the time. So I really, strongly encourage, again, like if those are skill sets that you don't have, it's okay. Still represent your client. Still go out and market that you're willing to do a deal with somebody that's commercial, and then call me or someone else, because I don't need to be the face of a deal, but I don't want you to not be successful. So, question?
Attaching to what you're talking about, this off subject, but still on your subject. I never want to forget this happened to me, and it just hit me wrong, and I'm glad it did. I was 34 years old. I was doing something dumb, buying this business that I didn't need to get into, and I won't go into all the details of it, but the owners wanted me to take the name Show and Sell Corporation. Well, I could appreciate taking their name because of the recognition, because they were a successful business time, just like H.T. Hackney is still owned by Bill Sansom, and H.T. Hackney goes clear back to prior to 1899, okay? And then the Mortons bought it out from the Hackneys, and then Sansom bought it out. Well, anyway, they're stuck with the name recognition, okay? Something felt funny about this thing when these two partners wanted me to take Show and Sell Corporation. So I said, I'm scared here to myself, and I changed it to Show and Sell Inc. It was not on the deed, you see. It was in the advertising. It was in the name. It didn't have anything to do with the real estate. I did it. The closing came. They looked bummed out, etc. And then an attorney working for me caught it. They had attached $250,000 worth of liabilities to Show and Sell Corporation, but since I changed it to Inc., they had to keep it, and they had to suck it up.
Yeah.
So really, beware of all the weird wrinkles that can happen.
Yeah, and that's why you want representation, right? And you have those partners, because that can happen, and they could also have goodwill that's attached to those brands. So, sorry.
Is there an agreement
depreciation or capital expense factor, or should I?
Morgan, we're going to come back to that question because that question's making my eyes cross. I love you. We'll teach NOI and then we'll answer that one if that makes sense. Because I think we might lose some folks. And we'll come back to that. It's a good question.
Can you talk about the ramifications of a buyer, you know, when you're talking about like environmental issues? Because I know you talked about it as like an agent, but I know that's one of the things that we see be a problem a lot that you may not be aware of.
Right. So when you're looking at commercial properties, and it doesn't even have to be something that's, let's say, a car wash or a dry cleaners or, you know, things like that would generally speaking have other environmental things like wastewater and other stuff like that involved. It could be things that you don't even know would have existed. And so, you know, doing things like a phase 1 environmental survey, which can cost $2,500. So as a buyer, this is an expense just for you to play. You don't even know if you're going to do the deal. This is just for you to find out whether or not this property has any issues, right? So those are the kinds of things that, you know, as a buyer, you really have to understand if you are going to be investing in commercial real estate that you know, again, that the cost to play is much higher oftentimes than on residential side.
Which I think
Good question.
is a great segue.
Yeah, it really dives into it because certainly, hey, if you found that one property that happens to need some rehab in your commercial building, really at the end of the day, you need to be thinking about just what's the highest and best use for this property, like in the long term, not just like as it sits now, but really what's the best use for this property overall, right? So.
And Cory and I were talking about this. This is one of the things we wanted to have you here is zoning and land use restrictions and can be a limitation, or if you're an expert, they can be a great opportunity, right? If you're better educated, you know how to use this. So one of the conversations that we always have when we're looking at properties is different
can it
use
be?
cases. And so I think I was talking with Lauren was telling me a story like, let's talk through a couple of different ways that you can work that. One of them, I think, she was telling me a story about Domino's, what you just did for Domino's.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have another one, I'd love to hear that as well of like, what are some opportunities I'm thinking about highest and best use that you've seen where we can really add value?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of examples. To touch on the Domino's one, I have a client that's a large Domino's franchisee. He owns other businesses and sites, but very kind of set on just readjusting his what they call DNS areas, so the area in which, you know, you can operate Domino's separate and apart from one another. And so we were very limited in kind of the space we were looking for. But I also just kept saying, gosh, you guys are about to throw like $350,000 into this, you know, lease, basically. You don't own this property. You're never going to get that build out money back, you know, over time, unless you're operating there for 10 plus years. And it just kind of really weighed on me. And I kept telling him, hey, like, let's talk about your goals, you know, not just as a franchisee, but just from a real estate perspective. He was selling a Domino's franchise in another state. And I said, let's talk about use of that money. Got him in contact with a 1031 exchange administrator who I love working with so that he can help exchange. And we're actually under contract right now on a property on Merchants that was a dry cleaners. So not at all would pass the normal Domino's test. In fact, we had to go up and get it approved. But the two big things that were a factor were having a window that was already basically a pickup window for them. And we're going to essentially split the property in half. We've already worked with them on the design activity. And then, you know, we'll be able to lease out the other half of the building for him. And now he'll have an income producing property that helps cover his costs as a franchisee. Wow. So that's a great opportunity. I had another large building in Avondale, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix metro area, 11,000 square feet. It was originally purchased by my client out of bankruptcy, who really wasn't sure what to do with it. We kind of looked at what the highest and best use would be, worked with the city of Avondale to rezone it and allow for things like behavioral health and school and things like that. And we just got that business, the building actually fully leased out to a very large, well-known behavioral health company in the Southwest. And now we're going to be able to sell that property for him as a performing asset with very high, performance. So those are the kinds of things where, there was another old property that used to be, it was a historic location, actually probably similar to Prince Street. And we had a historic location, didn't really think we could do much with it. I had a client that was looking to put a beauty salon, like beauty suites, in a location. So we were under contract for a lease. It didn't work out, decided to have her take a look at this, and we got it rezoned for her to be able to do that work out of the space that's right over off Broadway. And she has a photographer, a permanent makeup artist, and salon all set up in an old 1902, I think it was built, brick house. And every space has its own fireplace. So her people love it, the clients love it, and it was something that we had to get rezoned, but we worked with the city and got it done.
That's pretty cool. Good use of that, right? We, yeah, let's talk about handling some leases and all this, right? So another way commercial investing can differ from residential is just the handling of leases. How does all that work? Oops, sorry. So let's dive into just some of these common lease types, or take at least a quick glance. So we've got single net, double net, triple net, full service gross, modified gross, and absolute triple net bond.
Yeah.
In there.
A lot of fun stuff, right?
A lot of different ones, right?
And these are the type of leases that become important when we were talking about factoring in value and cap rate. So if you think about it kind of top to bottom, these are ones that are not quite as good and ones that are the best to have if you're looking to lease out your own property. So let's say you buy a commercial space and you're like, hey, I want a really good tenant. That absolute triple net's, the golden standard that you want to be able to get, but we'll get to that. So single net, it is basically just the lease, the tenant covers the base rent plus paying your property tax or their proportionate share of your property tax, depending. Why we say that is because if it's not a standalone building, if it's a multi-tenant building, if those buildings don't have separately metered utilities, then you get into situations about whether or not the client or the tenant, in this case, is paying one type of a lease versus another type of lease, because it's all going to be dependent on how you can manage your financials and bill them back. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, single net is just the base rent and property tax, and then double net is when they'll pay the base rent, but they'll pay property tax and insurance, or just some combination of property tax and insurance, and it depends on the owner. Every owner's a little different. Triple net is a great, that's kind of, everybody wants to buy a property that is performing with triple net leases as a minimum. That's kind of the minimum standard. And so, go ahead. So that's, again, when you are not only doing they're paying their base rent, and then you're able to bill them back essentially for your property tax, insurance, and all of your common area maintenance. And so that can be things like, if you have a building like this and you're paying for people to maintain the parking lot, you're paying for landscaping, pest control, all of those kinds of things, that gets billed back to the client. They're responsible for that, including sometimes even roof and HVAC.
So that's common area maintenance, or CAM. Like, you'll hear that phrase again and again, and that's going to be for all the things that it takes to actually run the building. So it's going to include plowing coming out and icing before storms, plowing that, updates, tenant improvements, signage.
Yep.
All that can be included in CAM. Will has a question for you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, are they also paying their own maintenance for their own, individual portion of that building?
They could. So it just depends on kind of what's being operated out of the site and what that takes. Some people will be paying some of their own utilities and any additional maintenance that's required, or if they have to do cleaning of a certain kind. Like, I know when I was running the plant, I had to have cleaners coming in and we had to get rid of, equipment grease and all that kind of stuff. So I would have paid for that as a tenant on my own. So it just kind of depends on what the operation is.
But it also kind of depends on the maintenance, right? So I've run CAM accounting and done commercial property management, and I've also been a vendor, like coming out to service commercial properties. Or it could just depends on the way the lease is structured. It could be, no, my landlord is responsible for the awnings and the roof but I'm responsible for what's going on inside of my unit. Cory was just saying at his restaurant, they were paying a triple net lease. And so they were responsible for all the internal operations, the kitchen, the drains, all that stuff. Cory was responsible for paying for those.
And that needs to be defined. So just so you guys know, like, triple net lease is very loose, right? you have to define that in the lease. So, I mean, one of the things that I will always do is make sure to call out before we even get into a lease is tell me exactly what is included in this common area maintenance. Tell me exactly what the owner is responsible for, because that's when you get into issues where you didn't know because it wasn't written out that you are responsible for replacement of an HVAC, not just maintaining it. Well, depending on the size and the number of units, I mean, you could pretty much turn yourself red real quick in terms of financials, right? So,
Cory had a good example. So what were you responsible for when you were running the restaurant and as a triple net leasee?
Yeah, so in running that business, I mean, we were responsible for everything like on the premises, right? We were responsible for the building, the maintenance, including like the HVAC. When it came time to restripe the parking lot, that was on us. Anything that would break, right? The AC that would notoriously go out because it's Central Florida and it's really hot, right, in August. So, right, any of those issues was all on us, and we were a triple net tenant there for, gosh, 15 plus years at this point. So awesome for that landlord, and just now pivoting to going and building our own location just down the road to kind of move out of that and finally have our own space out of
Good.
that. Right? Yeah, no doubt, because that was they cut us a pretty sweetheart deal. I mean, like the lease was, we were essentially responsible for all that. The monthly expense really wasn't too bad in terms of like the rent. So it was
Right.
it was a good deal that worked for like a long time, but eventually it's time to transition and go get our own space.
I think he kind of answered my question, but I was wondering when you have all those cams to pay for, does that lessen your lease payment typically? Is it kind of like a balance in some way?
no, and I will say, unfortunately, here it's getting worse, where rent is going up and everybody's expenses are going up. So, people are trying to bill back more and more now. And so, but I will also say that I fancy myself to be a pretty good negotiator. So it's rare that my clients ever pay the asking base rent. So, so there's always room for negotiation, depending.
Do you find certain types of businesses or buildings that tend to lean towards different types of leases, like single net, triple net?
Yes, for sure. So a lot of buildings, as an example like this, would be an example where you'd get full service gross or modified gross because, again, maybe not every suite has separately metered utilities. Maybe they are offering amenities, like I don't even know if there's a gym in here, but like there could be a fitness center in here, or there could be other things that are involved that you get as amenities that you pay for. And they don't want to have to say, okay, let me figure out how much water suite A's using versus suite B's using. So they'll just say, look, I'm just going to charge $10 across the board, and they're going to win some, lose some, right? But for the most part, they're winning. And so it's easier for them in their accounting a lot of times to do a lease like that.
And if you're watching at home, the question was, do you find businesses, like certain businesses, gravitate more towards different kind of leases? We are in a corporate office park with multiple buildings, and this one has multiple floors. So just for context. Let's talk about full service, modified, absolute net before we move on.
So again, full service is just basically it's taking one flat rate, right? So they're saying, hey, I don't want to have to account for all these things and reconcile that with my tenant and know what my cams are that I have to charge and be able to provide that in financials. So for me, as a landlord, it's just easier for me to give you one flat rate, and that's all inclusive, if you will. And so modified, usually what that boils down to is that there is just a proportionate share. So there might be multi-tenants, or some people will say, I'm not including property tax in that. So that's what it's modified by, or I'm not including certain cams in that. And it just all has to be spelled out. But typically it's because sometimes there might be another owner, and there's, variations of how they're bookkeeping taxes and insurance. So it's behind the scenes. A lot of times it's just what's best for the owner and their accounting and the write-offs.
And what's an absolute triple net?
Yeah, so this is where probably very similar to what you were experiencing without probably the casualty and condemnation, but it basically means it's your building. You're responsible for it. They just own it. I mean, the best way to describe it is you are responsible for anything and everything that may happen to that location. You just don't own it. So if there is a fire, it's on you. If the site has to be rebuilt, it's on you. If there's, could be everything from additional insurance charges for things like workman's comp and lawsuits if somebody falls, like even the owner isn't going to carry additional insurance. It's like you're responsible for everything. So as a owner, if you have a good tenant, so if you think about large institutional tenants or national credit tenants that are very well known and backed by a corporate guarantee.
By national credit tenant, do you mean like the names we would know, Publix or pick
Yeah.
your favorite,
Yep.
Chipotle? like-
Exactly. Or
okay.
there could be like even a hotel brand that pays for everything and they're just sitting on that developed lot that's owned by a different, a company. So, it could be any number of things, but those are typically where you'll see that type of lease.
Which takes us, I think, to the next slide. Like one thing to keep, let's talk through leases. One thing to keep in term and come back to this is like, if I own a building, the use cases are different for different tenants, which is why I have to have these conversations about leases or tenant improvements or something like that, because like the setup may not be the same, even in this shell. I may want more permanent offices or something like that, right? So there's a reason why the end user is taking on some more of those, there's some flexibility there. So
Right.
we skip through lease terms. Lease terms can vary, like,
Yes. I'll give you guys an example. So I toured a property yesterday with a client, and they're a large corporation. I mean, they're looking for a new location here. And we toured a property that had not been sold in a very, very long time. The property owner is a developer that has already just bought more land to develop. And they've had this property since 1998, okay? So you can imagine what they paid and what their taxes are and insurance and all this kind of stuff before. The minute that he turns around and sells that property that my client now leases, guess whose operating expenses or CAMs, right, and their share of property taxes and insurance are going to go up, and they can't do a thing about it. So we'll get into what you can do about it and how you can address things like expense stops. But that's why, like, it's my job to make sure I asked him point blank, because the guy that was showing the property was one of the owners. And I said, "Are you planning on selling?" And he just kind of looked at me and kind of took a step back for a second. I said, "I asked you if you're planning on selling." And he kind of fumbled around. And he was like, "Well, why are you asking that?" And I said, "Because you're promoting this as a really great property with a really great rate until it's not." And my client could be sitting in a 10-year lease that has escalations year over year that could make them not be able to operate out of that location.
I see a lot of nods.
Questions about that before I talk about terms? The reason that terms are important, where he had the years, is because it is an opportunity to negotiate. So just so you know, like obviously if you're only willing to sign up for a 3-year lease and you want to do a bunch of build out of the location, or you want the owner to help with any kind of build out or abatement of rent, which means basically getting it free for a couple of months, you likely are going to need to come to the table with having a little bit more skin in the game than a 3-year lease. And so now you'll start to see more and more where leases or tenants really can't be all that competitive unless they're willing to agree to a longer term lease, which helps negotiate rate though, of course, as well.
And then what's an escalation in I think it's the next slide here. What's an escalation in a lease?
So typically a lease will have built in that you pay 3% more than the prior year or 5% more than the prior year, year over year for the entire term of the lease. And so that is another opportunity to negotiate. I had a client as an example that's a preschool, and we were able to negotiate them down to 1% because, again, we were trying to help the landlord understand that they can't increase their prices year over year at the same rate that you're trying to get them to escalate at, and their expenses would just be too high. So, but we were agreeing to go with at least a 7-year lease, and we weren't asking them to do any build out at all. So there's kind of, there's different levers you can pull to negotiate the lease and help with that depending on the type of tenant you're solving for.
I'll say something too, from a lender's perspective, if the person is willing to do a 5 or 7 or 10, you can match, so that's a bargaining opportunity too.
Yep.
So you said that you can match what?
So normally when you do a commercial lender or a loan, you do like a 10-year fixed, you amortize it out over 25 years.
So you're saying normally when you do a commercial loan, you're doing a 10-year fixed rate, but it's amortized over a longer period, but it's adjustable after that initial fixed period.
It'll come up for a
So it's a balloon.
Yeah, it'll
Okay, sorry, so it's a 10-year balloon payment. Yeah.
So there's some opportunities to negotiate if you were the person coming in saying, well, I'll do a, you know, a 5-year lease, and from the tenant who owns the property, that he may have a loan on it, and he may have like a 5-year fix. The bank could say, oh, well, you got a 7-year lease, so we'll do a 7-year fix, and we'll amortize it out over 20.
Got it. So what he's saying is that one of the issues of commercial financing, which is, I like to talk at the end of this, the opportunities is these things sunset. So you have these balloon payments that you may be able to get a longer balloon payment if you get a longer lease. The bank looks at that as security, that they're willing to give you a longer fixed period of financing. Any questions? We're getting deep in the weeds. Did I lose everyone? A little bit? That's okay. I see Alex nodding here. We can go deeper into this, but we have a lot of, do you want to get into the details of what a letter of intent is, or a lease, or a purchase and sale agreement? Yeah? Cool. Maybe? Yes, Lance.
I apologize if I missed your introduction, but are you for hire to do this negotiating for people? Like one-off kind of stuff?
Lisa.
Yes. Yes. So I've had clients that will come to me and say, hey, like, I've already found the property. We already know what we want. You know, I actually already talked to the person. Can you help us in negotiation? So, obviously there's documentation we have to have around that because we are licensed, or I am licensed. So, you know, got to negotiate that part. But yes, that's, it's actually something I just did not too long ago for another person here.
Yeah.
You're like William Shatner, the negotiator.
So Lisa is a commercial agent, right? And so just like we were looking at some posts today, and I was struggling because it was like a off-market group trashing realtors. And look, we got a 90% failure rate, so there's a lot of, it's not hard to become a realtor. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're with the right, like, we know amazing realtors like Lisa that have like amazing experience, and if you know those people, it's like you're just picking terrible people. Those are like people that are like complaining about men or what, like, you have terrible taste. You got bamboozled. There are amazing agents out there. There's amazing agents in this room that I would trust with my family that add a lot of value. So yeah, 100% you could hire Lisa to represent you if you wanted to go do a commercial transaction. I recommend you do. That's why she's on stage. Lauren, yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, from an investor standpoint, you know, Lisa's speaking from buying, but if you're looking at buying a commercial property or doing that, then it's also important to have a great agent like Lisa to represent you, to make sure that you're getting everything in your lease, or if you're selling, buying properties, that you're doing due diligence. And so from an investor into commercial, it's important to have it on that side as well for obvious reasons. So it's not only when you're looking as a potential buyer, but also as an investor or property, you know, landlord, property owner, whatever.
Real quick, raise your hands. I'd love to actually see this. Who's realized commercial real estate is a lot more complicated than they thought? Yeah. And if you didn't, it's because you just knew. That's why you're here. You're like, I know it's complicated and I want to be here, right? But it's incredibly complicated. There is a lot of nuance. Frankly, there's a lot of nuance to residential real estate. Just people don't read their contract. And nobody is suing anybody because at $300,000, like the amount is. But if you get into luxury real estate, like, that contract can be just as detailed and nuanced because people are suing. People are suing when there's real money on the line.
Yeah, I mean, and I do residential real estate for friends and family and referrals, and like I said, I'm licensed in multiple states, and, you know, I was doing a $2.2 million property in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I mean, that was way less difficult, you know, to do the commercial property that I was doing that had way more involvement, because everything emotionally that goes into residential real estate as well kicked my ass, excuse me. But I was like, I'm not big with, you know, excuses and kind of finding reasons not to do stuff. I'm a very solution-oriented person. So it's like, in residential, you're kind of pulling that out of people a lot more. And so commercial can be fun, actually, I will say.
One of my favorite things about commercial is just to give you, like, peek behind the curtain. There's not many agents here, but on the agent side, the commercial real estate world is much more of a business world. There's much more of an almost a corporate professional culture. Residential can just be, you get every walk of life. So sometimes like in terms, you get every personality style in residential real estate, which can be fascinating. On the commercial side, I find it's way less, I don't have to kick the dirt and show off for my clients like I'm a baseball, manager it's just, can I get to a solution? And there's lots of ways. Hey, we can't give you that. We're a preschool, but we're going to extend the term.
Yep.
Like there's
I mean,
a
it's-
win-win
when
solution
we say it's
there.
business, it's truly business, right?
Yes.
So we treat it that way.
Will,
What would be like a starter play for commercial real estate? Whereas like single family home is like one single family rental is like a starter play for residential. What is like a starter play for commercial?
awesome. So the question you're having, and thank you for asking that question. You teed it up perfectly. What's a starter play for commercial real estate? I've been playing in the residential game. I want to get into commercial. Where can I start?
So you guys are going to hate me saying this, and I say it a lot. It depends. So, and the reason is it depends on your goals, right? So it's going to depend a lot on what do you have to bring to the table? Do you need other investors to be involved? What are your goals in the property? Because when searching for something, right, and if I'm working with you, I want to find the absolute best opportunity for you. But that's because we've sat down and I've said, all right, let's understand your financials. Let's understand what you're trying to accomplish with this. Are you looking for something that you can hold for 2 years and 1031 exchange it? Do you want to buy and hold and find really good tenants? So it really does depend on your goals. But what I will say on just a general basis is if you can find a pretty kind of simple standalone building, maybe 1 or 2 tenants, that is already in an area that's a pretty defined zoning, that you can either own or operate yourself because you have a business that you can operate out of, or friends and family that need a space, or that is pretty easy from a demand perspective to place a tenant into, that's what you want to start with. So it's very similar if you're finding a good rental property, right? You want to find something you can fix up at probably as low as cost as you can in, right? Get a good renter in there and start cash flowing. So let's talk at some point. We'll figure out how to help you. Yeah.
As experienced investors, do you all recommend doing more of the residential before getting into commercial?
Do you recommend doing more residential before getting into commercial? And you know what? I'd love to hear Cory's take on this before we go to Lisa, because you're on the residential investing side, like putting your toes in a commercial. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that seemed to be the most logical direction for me to go in terms of starting in residential single-family homes, start getting into small multifamily. I could certainly see that commercial would be in the future, more than likely probably in some kind of, as multifamily starts to become commercial, right at that 5 units or more. For me would be the logical progression, on my investing journey in there. We touch here on, and Lisa kind of nailed it perfectly, some of these entry-level stuff that's usually got pretty good demand around it. Retail storefronts, restaurant pads, self-storage. These are places that oftentimes have been maybe owner-occupied, and that owner might be looking to sell out, get rid of, close that business, or sell that business off, and then there's an opportunity for somebody to step into and sort of take it all over from their point, where you can get the business and the building, say, at the same time. I can sort of see that to be as a natural, progression.
And I'm curious, Lisa, is there, I love your answer on that, but do you also think you can also just start with commercial?
Yes. And I would say always do what you're more passionate about. So for me, the whole reason that I love commercial doesn't have anything to do with large commercial deals, I'll say, even though those are great. I wrote an LOI last week for a $13 million property. Okay, so yes, those are great. However, my most favorite clients, my most favorite properties, things to do, and my husband can attest to this, are startups and people who are small business who didn't even know they could do it. And we were able to get them a property that they can run, that they can now own. I have a client who I'm so proud of. She was leasing a space forever here. She had owned her own salon and stuff, and we actually found her an old dentist office, which she didn't understand why in the hell I was showing her an old dentist office, but it already had the plumbing. And that one thing you need is water when you're running a salon and stuff. So took her through it, and yes, it required build out, but I mean, she is killing it. Has this location. She's now used that opportunity to put some other things in there. She's designing her own product, and I go by there multiple times a week, and I just get a big smile on my face. Same thing happened with some clients of mine in Arizona. And to me, like, that was where my passion was, is how do I help, especially other females who did not know that they could do it themselves, be able to get into something they never thought they could and be very successful at it. So I would say, again, do it if you're passionate about it. If you love residential real estate and you think you're a short-term investor person, go for it. It's not me. Like, I don't do it, because to me, that's not what I'm passionate about.
And I see a couple hands, so I'm going to get to you real fast. I will say Christian Swan, that was on stage here last year, said, I love hotels and I am passionate about hotels. So I kept coming in the door for these hotels for years until I got the opportunity. Like to go, because I wanted to go sell hotels, because I like staying in nice hotels, and I like, I'm passionate about those. One of the places, like, if you've got the mind for it, one of the things I love collaborating on, and Cory can do this as well, is like, how do we creatively use space? Yeah. Like, that is stuff, like, you do not want me negotiating your lease. That's honestly like one of I partnered with Lisa because, like, we went and sold a property together, but Lisa also got it leased before it closed. And I was like, I can go out and attract, maybe get a buyer. There's no way I'm going to successfully negotiate a lease and put that client in there. But we could talk about how do we use the space, or how do we and collaborate on that. I get excited by that. I have experience with that. To answer your question, it's going to come down to access to capital. Honestly, one of the reason why residential real estate is the entry for so many people here is just access to capital. There's 100% loan right now with no PMI at ORNL Federal Credit Union. So if you don't own, go own a home, house hack that, move up to another home. Like, it's the leverage available to you on the residential side that makes it so easy. But like, I don't know where Nathan is, we were talking about this yesterday, you can also open up an LLC and establish business credit. In a couple of years, be running some very attractive plays. So I see Jen's hand, and then I saw a
Let me
hand.
make one comment on that.
Yeah.
Is also, again, using events like this to network, because there are a lot of people who do have the capital and need to place their money somewhere. When I say need, it's, for their own tax purposes or sheltering or whatever, and for their own investment. So if you can make a win-win for each other, leverage investors. The other thing is that in commercial, a lot of times those owners will offer seller financing. So they're willing to beat the bank, right, on all of these rates, and carry for much better terms, because for them, they just want that cash flow, but they need to hold on to the property a little bit longer, or, whatever. So keep that in mind. There's multiple ways you can do it.
Hannah Ingram, who you might see running ads on your social media, like friend of ours, Come to Grid, who's another KW agent, got an owner-financed car wash with very, very little out of pocket. So you can jump right into that play as well.
Yep.
Jen.
So I was just gonna mention a couple creative ways to get in as well. I own 2 commercial lending brokerages, and so, like you said, SBA is amazing. If they're not gonna do seller, finance, they can help to finance part of the down payment as a carryback. And then one of the ways that is really fun with multifamily is you can actually mix like a purchase with a refinance. So agency lending has amazing rates. And essentially, I've got somebody who is buying a 4-unit that's next to their 16-unit, so they're gonna do agency financing. And I think their rates like high 5s right now. So you can mix properties like that with agency financing, and it gets a little complicated, but it's a fun way to be creative too.
It is. And I love my lending partners, so let's talk.
Allie.
This was kind of my own personal response in my experience with like intro to buying commercial properties was a very like mom and pop experience where a family had owned a house that was built in 1917 and built their own storefront in the back, and then it's right by the baseball stadium, and they were selling it like a residential property kind of, so it was like not on any of the commercial sites, and it was very like under the radar, and it was very affordable, but I, as a small business owner, was looking for a bigger studio. And I I think it kind of plays off of your example of like when you're passionate about something, you find you
Yes.
find your niche and what you like. Like I would never want to personally buy a hotel or like a restaurant type business.
Right.
But for me, I know a ton of local artists who need studios, and we found like 2 commercial buildings and a house on one tiny property right by the baseball stadium for like super cheap, and it was like a good intro for us to commercial real estate and being like, is this something we actually should get into?
Yeah.
So just to summarize, for everyone listening there, Allie shared a great story about finding a residential property that had commercial as well. It was being marketed residentially, but what really attracted her was she was a small business owner. There was a use case for her small business, and then she knew other small business owners in the same line of work that were able to use that same space.
And I always say to you guys, tell people you're interested, right? Like everybody you talk
Yes.
to, tell everybody, hey, look, I'm interested in, somebody knows somebody who's selling something, right? That, even if they haven't put it on the market, it's like, oh yeah, I know my family member, they've owned a, mechanic shop for 20 years and he's getting ready to retire. He's going to sell. I mean, cool. Can I talk to him? Or, I'll call him, I have tracked down many of people who didn't expect me to be knocking on their door or their property. I didn't stalk, but I kind of did for a little while. So.
I'd like to hear kind of how like you've seen the commercial industry change over
Yeah.
the last couple of years. Like, how is it different now compared to what it was 3 or 5 years ago? Like,
Yeah.
is stuff sitting longer? What are prices looking like? Just kinda what your take is.
Yes.
Jake wants to know how the commercial industry has changed the landscape over the last 3 to 5 years.
And what the state of it is now. Like, where do you think we'll go in the future? Is it dying out? What is it kind of looking like?
And Jake wants to know what the future is going to look like.
Kit,
Sorry, I got to restate it for the.
for the people at home. So again, it depends on location. Okay, so if you want to focus here, we can, and we can kind of talk about macro a little bit. It has changed drastically, and there's a couple reasons for that, especially here in Tennessee. So I've had the benefit of living in Southern California, and living in Arizona for a number of years, and we saw what's happening here 20 years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And so now what's happening is we have all these people coming from other places, right, that are now, quite frankly, challenging us to be better and more sophisticated in our ownership and in our transactions from a commercial perspective. And so I can tell you I've gotten into many a debate with my title company partners and others, including my brokerage, because I just feel like there's things we're not doing that we could be doing much better to represent commercial properties. So the growth is exponential, but what we are seeing trends of are things like a lot of spaces like this, right, are not going to be as full as they used to be. Nobody's building out large scale call centers that a bunch of people are going to come to work at every day, right? That kind of stopped after COVID. So you'll see a lot of, when we talked earlier about being able to change use case of places, I had a client who came in and bought a building that was very similar to this. The top 3 floors were just not even in use. And so they actually put a school on the bottom and took the 3 floors on the top and made them a gym, basically. So they had a fitness center for employees and they had a basketball court for their school. And so those are the kinds of things we're starting to see more of, is having properties change use and getting rezoned and things like that. What we are seeing also a continued growth in is flex space. So people that, smaller businesses that don't need 10, 20, 100,000 square foot warehouse or industrial spaces are looking for something more 5 to 10,000 square feet that they can put some office, some warehouse or distribution in. So being able to pick up a property, let's say that might be a little bit more distressed, but you don't mind going and hiring somebody to put in a roll-up door that doesn't exist instead of those windows. Now you've opened yourself up to multiple, tenants that wouldn't even have looked at this space before. So those are the kinds of things we're continuing to see trend, as just kind of reuse. And then obviously, growth that would normally happen in an area that is growing by population are things like more hotels, more properties just generally being developed. I think we all agree, though, that we love when spaces are kept, and it's just all about sustainability if you can, right? I love being able to see properties, be kept instead of torn down and huge developments happen. But of course, I have development clients, so I understand, what they're doing as well.
So it
So-
seems like clients are having to take on those properties and then change them
Mm-hmm.
or like do the permitting that's gonna increase risk. Are the prices of those properties then going down because they're having to take?
So the question is, if you're buying properties where there's gonna need to be a use case change, is that negatively affecting the property value?
So I have an off-market listing right now. I was talking to Jay about earlier. I have somebody who wants to sell. He bought the property 3 years ago, never put a tenant in it. His idea was to kind of turn it and flip it and have it be more medical office space. Sits excellent road frontage. But it was a vape shop and smoke or guns. Okay, felt like a while ago, and which is fine, right? If that's the tenant you have in there, like that's great. But the problem is that those are no longer in there, and the property has sat dark for the last 3 years. And in his mind, he's like, yeah, but I bought it for X amount, and I think I can sell it for, 1.5 times that minimum. And I'm like, what? How? Why do you think that, right? And so educate me on what your thought process is, and then we have to turn around and educate him saying, hey, actually this is an underperforming distressed asset because you've also had deferred maintenance on it. All this kind of stuff is happening. And, you do that, but it's great for an investor, and we can talk about this in next month's meeting because I'll probably be ready to sell it to somebody, is like, that's great for somebody to come in and pick up a property like that when you can get it at a distressed price and be able to have the capital to fix it up to its highest and best use.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that makes commercial different than other asset classes is you can do forced appreciation. So I could come in and I could buy an apartment building or something and raise the rents, and then I automatically increase the value of the property because the property is based off of income, but it goes in the other direction as well, right? If I'm not generating income off of that property, it has less intrinsic value sometimes than a residential property because it's directly tied off to the use case, right? Whereas with the residential property, like we all need someplace to live. It should be, the rest of the homes in there are somewhat buoying those. If you don't have tenants, it's gonna go down. One thing, just if anyone's new, flex space, think of like a painter's office or something. You might have seen these, right? Where the back is like roll-ups, or it could be unfinished, but the front is offices. Like everything on Baum Drive, you ever go on Baum Drive, like those are all flex spaces. And that can be everything from like a warehouse in the back to just like you said, where, hey, it's a roll up, but it's
Yep.
storage in the back. It's not like finished office spaces. Yeah, Joy.
This might be a little off topic, but in terms of like vacant, distressed, or like dilapidated commercial properties, in terms of development or redevelopment, how does the city, like, do they work with developers on that? Like, what do they supply them with, or how does that, like, are there benefits or advantages to it?
So the question you're asking is, and then we're talking about the city of Knoxville specifically, but hey, if I'm looking at vacant, dilapidated properties in the city, are there redevelopment opportunities? Are there advantages? I want to hear Lisa's question. Cory and I were talking about this yesterday, actually, because there's an opportunity over in Burlington and East Knoxville. They're doing some incentives for this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So some, finding out if they're in opportunity zones to begin with would be, something we gotta find out.
What's an opportunity zone?
So an opportunity zone, thank you for that question, is when the federal government and/or the local government have designated an area for grants, federal grants or city money, to be able to repurpose an existing area and redevelop it. And you get tax benefits and other things that'll come with that. There's a lot that goes into it, but
And
high level.
If you go look at a map, downtown Knoxville, South Knoxville, East Knoxville, the whole corridor down to the airport and parts of Sevier County are all in an opportunity zone. If you invest in an opportunity zone and leave your money in for at least 10 years, you can avoid capital gains, you can take depreciation and avoid depreciation recapture, and you can do some really interesting things. Like that's a way to bail yourself out of a 1031 is opportunity zones. So to go back to starting with an opportunity zone. what
Yeah,
else
and
was
then
it?
also, I'm a big believer too, is look at the areas where things are needed, because it is easier to work with some cities that it's just begging, right, for some sort of redevelopment, but maybe that opportunity zone hasn't come about yet. So my family's all from La Follette, and if anybody, it's not La Follette, It is not Lafayette, it's La Follette, okay? So just know that. The downtown area, it's begging. Like I say this to my husband all the time, the growth from Norris, the growth from the development of the whole new marina, it's just, the area is begging for redevelopment, and there's opportunities to buy those spaces, but it's, one, a lot of people don't really go downtown when they go. It's like, boop, I'm focused straight on going to the lake, right? But everything around there supports the lake. So if you think about all the businesses that are needed in those areas, now a lot of them are being redeveloped, but those are properties you could pick up for nothing compared to what you're going to pay in Knoxville. So it's a great place, kind of going back to the original question of where might you start in your investing journey, is some place that really needs it, but nobody's talking about, because you're the one that's going to make that money, and they're going to be talking about it a couple years from now.
One of the opportunities that is available, and Nathan Sibley isn't here, but if you know Nathan, Nathan's a contractor that comes here sometimes. Nathan was working with the city on this advanced Knox, which was like basically the listening sessions for the new growth plan. One of the things that we've talked about is if you look at that new growth plan, they want to encourage mixed-use development down these essential corridors. So you can go on kgis.org, our local geographic information system, kgis.org. You can look at future growth plans, and they want to do, to your point, commercial, like mixed-use development all up and down. So think like Broadway, Central, like Martin Mill. They want to encourage development all up and down those, as well as they've got some like the South Waterfront Development District. They're doing some pretty interesting things to allow like more dense usage.
So are there incentives or like benefits to it, or how does that?
Absolutely. And so that's where I was going to say it does help. First, I want to note that it goes back to what Justin was saying. I'm a big believer in diversity. And by that, I mean diversity in thought, right? And people's experiences and their connections. Because having those connections in various, cities or areas that you can look at, or just backgrounds in all kinds of things, you'll find that if you start connecting with people, you're going to find out about more opportunities than even are on city websites. So I just want to note that. But to answer directly, when you go on the various city websites and the federal government websites even, there are specific opportunities you can actually look for. And also some that the state land, as an example, gets sold on websites along with buildings that got taken back by the state or city. So there's opportunities that are honestly endless to be named, but it's worth connecting like with someone like myself and others who have connections with those various cities, where you're getting right in touch with somebody with, economic development and planning and things like that, to learn more about which areas need it the most and are offering the most tax incentives, all kinds of other,
And just like the city makes this stuff very easy. Like they'll have sessions like on an annual basis where they come in and they're like, here's all the blighted properties and here's how you work with the city. And I think I'm a big fan of the city of Knoxville and the county. I find them both to be, if I call planning or if I call zoning or permitting, I get very easy answers. Now, going through the process is very different. But in terms of like information, the information is like, it's for most people that are sitting in here, the information is pretty easy to get to. It's when you start getting to like MPC or rezoning, it gets like a bit messy. We are a little past time, so we can wrap this thing up or we can go over some math really quick. What would you prefer? I don't want to hold anyone hostage, but we can teach you some very quick math on what net operating income is and on what cap rate is, if that's cool.
Yep. And no offense taken, guys, if you're like, I'm done, this is overload.
Yes, but really, really fast, let's just talk through this because this is some terms that I think are just really important to understand. Lisa, what's net operating income? Because that comes up a lot. We talked about it in triple net. So what's net operating income?
So this is a very high level example, but when you look at rental income and any other income streams or revenue streams that you can make money on from that property, that you take that income into effect and then you subtract all of your operating expenses. And so to answer the question I think somebody had earlier was, how do you make sure that all those expenses are captured, or the various types of expenses? You truly do have to look at somebody's performance on their financials by line item, because a lot of times other agents will try to trick you into thinking that it's a really great net operating income because they're not including in their high-level calculations other costs that need to be accounted for. So really looking into the details of where all of your revenue streams are coming from and what expenses are direct to operating that location is what's really important, and that'll determine how much you're making year over year.
And so to make it really, really simple, right? You've got your rent. We looked at different ways it could be structured, but I've got the rental amount that I'm bringing in, regardless of the kind of lease. I got ancillary income. Maybe I have a billboard on my property that generates $1,000 a month. Or I've got some vending machines or a contract, whatever. That's my ancillary income. I rent part of my parking lot or something. And then whatever my direct operating expenses are, that's gonna be my net operating income.
What do you do if the business owner's P&Ls are just a mess?
What do you do? Oh, this is a great question. What do you do if the business owner's P&L are a mess?
One of my
Anyone that's
favorite
bought
things.
a cabin in the Smokies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things, probably one of the least favorite things for anybody else, but it's called forensic accounting. And so you dig in and you ask a million questions and you ask for proof. You know, and there are going to be some things where it's like, listen, bake in the fact that, you know, just like any, let's say, renovation project, right? The GC quoted you $15,000, you might as well assume 25 probably, you know? So those are the kinds of things where when you're getting into the investment, you should assume that there's hidden costs somewhere, something that they haven't talked about. And so it's really important to kind of really know everything to ask for on those line items. And some of that's just going to come with experience.
All right, so we're gonna cover that. We covered cap rate already. Wrap this up really quickly. Cory, we got a couple winners. So we have a couple winners on our Facebook. If you want to announce them real fast, my guy.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
So it's a blogging account, The Fierce Phoenix. Listen, right back there. Yeah, right, yeah, very good. We'll get you with Allison. We've got some free swag to give away on that one as well. So thank you very much for helping promote on there as well. And Jesse's Bright Bookkeeping right there.
Awesome.
So if you need some accounting help, there you go, right there. They'll be our winners. So thank you very much for your help on that one.
Yes. Want to thank Lisa. If you've got some questions, if you want to go over this, I'm going to wrap this up, but we can go and dive into details real fast on LOIs and PSAs, and we'll wrap this up here. But I want to thank everyone for coming.
Yes,
Want
thank
to
you.
thank Lisa for coming. Did you get something valuable out of today? Yeah.
This Friday? Next Friday. Oh, no, I'm in Arizona.
So, and we're going to have a coffee where we're going to be talking more about commercial one-on-one, mainly networking. But if you've got some questions, bring them there.
I'm
Yes,
happy to
bring them
host
here.
something else too. If you really have interest, let Justin know. I'm happy to do kind of a separate session and just.
Yeah, you want to do a lunchtime session and nerd out?
Right.
Okay, cool.
How do we get in contact with you if anybody wants to use you as a realtor?
Smoke signals. If someone wants to use Lisa,
I
how do
actually,
you get in contact?
Lauren can probably grab, I have cards. Sorry.
Yeah, go back and
Yeah,
and
but I
throw that
have
up.
a bunch of cards here, so if anybody wants them, you can grab them.
Yep.
Thank you, Lauren, sorry.
So her contact information is on the back of the handout if you grabbed one up front. Lisa's also tagged in all of our grid stuff here.
Thank
You
you.
can grab one of her cards, right? And it'll be in the email that we send out if you want to get some information from Lisa. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate you so much. We couldn't do it without you. And if you're brand new, come grab us. We'd love to meet you if we haven't met you already.
Thank you guys
Thanks,
very much.
Yeah.